Hello, welcome to another episode of ITV's mobile media channel. I'm Alvin, your host, and we're very lucky to have our guest today, Mr. Alvin Fu, another Alvin of the mobile industry. Alvin's been in mobile for a number of years. He's been with Madhouse, with Nokia, with Velti, and most recently with AdMob. So, I think he's got a wealth of experiences to share with us and with our audience about what's going on in mobile today and where things are going in the future. So thank you for joining us, Alvin.
Thank you, Alvin. So the big A, right?
Well, we're both equally big in this industry. I think we've been here for a very long time, right. And I guess we're just want to get a little experience from you. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can start off just explaining kind of a little bit about your background, and then also kind of what AdMob is and what it's doing in China.
Right. Okay. Well, basically, I'm actually heading up AdMob in China, and AdMob is actually an acquisition that was actually done by Google some 2 years ago. And this is a company that was recently acquired, and Google paid some $750 million. And it's now part and parcel of the whole Google mobile aspirations. And moving forward, I think this is going to be a big piece for the whole advertising aspiration of Google, not just in China, but also globally. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, I think that was a very momentous occasion when AdMob got bought, and it kind of signaled the beginning of mobile advertising as a real business. I think that somebody would pay that much money for something in mobile. So, and it started off, I think Quattro was also acquired very recently after that by Apple to do their iAds.
That's right.
So, I think that that company has actually created what today's in-app advertising business has been. Right. So, it's definitely an innovator in the business. And in China now, there's actually quite a few companies doing it. Maybe you can kind of give a little kind of what the landscape is in China.
In China, I think what's happening in China, it's also very, from my perspective, right, our perspective is actually very similar to what's happening internationally as well. Mm-hmm. Here is a situation where you have ad networks who were the old ad networks provider. These were the people who were on the web advertising. And of course now you have got the guys who are in the in-app advertising, which what Google is doing, the AdMob is doing, and which some of the local guys like DuoMob and even Madhouse is also doing as well. Mm-hmm. So internationally in China, I think it's pretty much the same. But the only thing is that it's actually, progressing at different stages. But in terms of how they are moving, as far as the overall landscape is concerned, right, whatever that exists in the States, right, on a global scale, right, exists in China. You have got the mediation company who does mediation. You got the guys who are in-app advertising, and you got the guys who is just purely mobile ad agency. Mm-hmm. So I think in terms of the landscape is pretty much the same. It's just that we're moving at different pace, and a lot of people are just trying to figure out what's happening and trying to figure out what works and all that. I don't think anybody has an answer to exactly what works. Yeah. But I think the main thing is that everyone believes that at some point, right, this is going to be a huge business. Not because Google is betting big on it. I think the fact that if you look at the adoption of smartphone, coupled with the fact that if you look at some of the metrics that you see growth on tablets and all that, right, this is clearly a sign that something must happen on that space, right? And I think and of course coupled with Apple iAds and also Google and a whole bunch of our guys who are on it, right? That clearly is a sign that we are definitely moving in that direction.
So how far ahead do you think the Western market or U.S. market is versus what China is today?
I think the States it's probably 12 to 18 months, 12 to 18 months ahead, in the sense that there are lots of drive in the States that they are leading the market in the sense that in reality the States actually was at one time, right, behind China. Yeah. Right, and of course really iPhone really changed all that, and of course Google somehow with Android accelerated that. So I think they are like 12 to 18 months, and I believe that given where they are and given at the pace that we are moving, I think at some point we will catch up. But I think they're at least 12 to 18 months ahead.
And of the revenue, where do you think how much is it going to be web-based? How much is going to be mobile-based for Google going forward? Maybe near term and kind of longer term.
Right. From a mobile revenue perspective, I think it's still small if you compare that to web. But if you look at our recent announcement, financial announcement, Larry was saying, now this is mobile business now. It's a $2.5 billion business for mobile. Mm-hmm. It's small if you make reference to the total size of the web, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of how it went from 0 to 2.5, right?
Yeah.
From Google perspective, it's one of the largest and fastest growing business in terms of from 0 to $1 billion business. So it's fast and it's just going to accelerate.
Mm. Yeah, I completely agree, and we see that today. I mean, it's amazing how many new smartphones are getting sold in the marketplace. In fact, I think they just announced now China has overtaken the U.S. in terms of new smartphone sales.
Right.
Right. That's pretty amazing considering where things were a couple of years ago.
Right.
And
right.
The price points of where these devices are coming in.
Right.
So it seems like the last couple of years Android has really started to take the lead in terms of volume over iOS.
Right.
How do you see that changing in terms of long-term growth in terms of market share, as well as revenue share and kind of ad revenue share?
Right. I think the growth of Android, we're thankful in the sense that because we have got lots of manufacturer partners, right, who are actually supporting us. So that has somehow accelerated our growth in the sense that I think in most market now, we are number one in terms of smartphone penetration, mm-hmm. yeah, and also market share. And in terms of revenue, I think that has also been very positive on the advertising side, because as more and more people use a smartphone, even on Android, right, you see more ads being served on it. So in that sense, I think it will continue to accelerate in favor of Android. I think pretty much in favor of Android. But I'm not saying that just because Android is actually ahead, right? That means that the players like iPhone is actually not making enough traction. But in terms of revenue-wise, I think right now we're seeing the acceleration, but at some point, right, we'll see Android catching up as far as revenue is concerned. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's purely just number that smartphone is ahead, Android is ahead. But in terms of revenue, I think there's some catch up.
So why do you think that even though the numbers, the market share of users is much more on Android, but the revenue hasn't caught up to that the user count?
Right. I think it is also because how the whole ecosystem was developed from day
mm-hmm.
one, and the fact that also the user base, right? I mean, Apple has got a much more kind of like mature user base and user base who are more. And these are the big fans of Apple, right? I mean, these are the guys who started, going to what's an app and downloading an app. But if you look at the smartphone, right, on Android, right, a lot of people are moving on Android. I'm looking at some of the people who are actually at the high end, the Galaxies down there. But a whole big segment of them these are the low end to middle range Android. So if you look from perspective, right, we are maybe aggregating a lot of smartphones, but in terms of actually value down to revenue, I think it's a lot smaller. But I think, as I said earlier, right, this is going to pick up as time goes by. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also recent announcements that Apple now has 52% of all profitability in the mobile industry, which seems a little extraordinary considering they're only about 5% of unit share.
Right.
Do you see that type of a trend continuing, or?
I read a report recently that says that, correct me if I'm wrong, right? I think it was saying that the Android market, right, commands something like 7% mm-hmm. of what App Store is doing. Yeah, mm-hmm. I'm not exactly sure on which metrics they are basing, but the fact was, you can see very clearly because I think it's a lot more mature in App Store because the payment is in place, mm-hmm. and it's a lot more mature. The user base is a lot mature, right? Yeah. But as opposed to the Android market, there's still a lot more on free games, yeah, and freemiums and all that stuff, and also because of payment, mm-hmm. And right now, as you know, the only pay-on is actually to Google Wallet, right? Yeah. And I think this needs to improve. And at some point, I think when we see more integration on payment, I think that will accelerate. Right. Yeah,
that makes sense. And I think they're doing a lot on the NFC and payment side coming up, so Android right. should make some big strides there. Right. Actually, let's move to one of your former employees or employers, Nokia. Right. So they recently announced that they're going to essentially ditch Symbian and MeeGo and go to Windows or Windows Phone. What do you think about that? And do you think that's the right strategy for them?
Well, from a personal perspective, right? I think had I been if I had been in a position to decide, right, I think Nokia could have been much better if they would have taken the Samsung playbook. Yeah, this is not a matter of choosing which platform, mm-hmm. But at least they've chosen maybe Android platform at the time, right? That would have been, at least allowed them to accelerate. Yeah, mm-hmm. right.
So it sounds like you don't necessarily agree that Windows is the right platform for them to put their bet on.
Well, again, I will definitely give them the benefit of the doubt. I had the opportunity to look at the latest Windows 7.
The Lumia.
The Lumia. I must say, the phone, the design, and the response and the feel looks pretty good. I think the only thing is that because it has taken them quite a fair bit of time to come to where they are right now. So I think it's going to be a uphill task to really dish out of those phones. But the phone in general looks decent. I think for the first time, from my perspective, right, I think Windows has actually come up with a platform that actually at least is is competitive. Whether they will make sufficient traction, I think you still need to look at many because if you look at the whole ecosystem, it's just not the phone. I mean, it's the payment, it's the App Store, and a whole bunch of other things, right? So if you add that all up together, I think there's a humongous task that Nokia and Windows needs to put together. I mean, they're up against not just Android, but also Apple, which has got a lot more mature platform in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nokia has always been respected for their hardware. They've had very elegant, durable, good battery life, and the new design actually is very nice. I've seen some the products, and it feels good. But definitely it's 3 years too late, probably.
Yeah, I mean, had that product been out in market 2 years ago, I think they will be in the race. But 2 years. 2 years is a long time mobile, right? You know what I'm saying? So
it's like dog years.
So unfortunately, I think 2 years is a long time. They've taken too much of the time. I think Galaxy or Samsung, on the other hand, really picked the right strategy in the sense that I said to you, if you had to pick a strategy to work on a mobile playbook, I pick Samsung in a sense because, to pick a platform that works in their favor. And Android was there 2 years ago, right? And Nokia could have just pick the platform and roll Android in 6 months, right? So 2 years.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of people are still saying that Migo might have been a better platform than Windows 7.
Maybe, so, who knows, right?
But let's get a little more practical. Let's talk about kind of what you guys are doing in some, I guess, specific kind of customers that are using your product. What's working, what's not working. Right. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
A big portion of I'll share with you what works. It's kind of like it's going to be a long tail if you start to tell what doesn't work, right? Bulk of our clients, right, are still largely driven by performance-based, they call it lead generation or whatever you call it, it's performance-based, right? And most of these people are the app developers. And it's just the nature of the whole ecosystem.
Sure.
I mean, the app developers are the first people who actually, develop the whole ecosystem on App Store. And it's also, makes a lot of sense for these people to spend a lot of money on the App Store and advertising the apps, right? So these are the big chunks of customers who are spending a lot of money on the networks. Not just at AdMob, but across, right? So these are the customers who are driving the ad spend on.
So what percentage do you say are kind of branded customers versus the app development customers?
I think right now you're looking at at least 70-30, 70 in favor of the app developers. Brands are gradually coming in because brands. I think this year is really an app development. It's like an app development year for the brands. It's like every brand we got to have an app. We need an app. We must make an app. It's like, because everyone is doing an app, nobody really thought about it, do we need an app? But let's go and do an app, right? I think next year is going to be less, the theme for next year is probably let's do an HTML5, right? So this has been a very exciting year for the brands because everyone has gone, I'm not saying that many people have been successful, many brands have been successful, but as far as app development is concerned this year, lots of brands are actually putting lots of initiative in development on
So when you say the 30% that are being spent for brands, it's still brands with apps, or it's brands promoting, retail, or brands promoting brand awareness? How does that break down?
Yeah, it's a mixture. I mean, it's brands. The brands guys are actually doing a lot of apps because they see it's cool, and the trend of apps is just that everybody's on app, right? But of course, it's not just entirely on app. Brands are using it as an awareness campaign to drive traffic to the mobile side. So it's still across, but a lot of activity on apps.
Yeah, and so for customers that you've seen are brands with apps or with mobile campaigns that's been successful, what are some commonalities? What makes them successful?
Well, there is really no formula, no recipe on what makes them successful. I think it all goes back to the basic. You got to think of why do you even need a mobile strategy in the first place, right? I mean, if these guys are just going to dive into it, right, and say let's do an app, man, and not figuring how to maintain it and update it and a bunch of other things, right? And not even knowing who are your audience, right? You're just going to end up, fixing an app that has got no audience, right? So a successful campaign, right, comes with a lot of work. You need to understand your audience, right? You need to build a mobile strategy that is around it, and at the same time thinking and how do you maintain it, how do you keep up, and how do you update, and how do you keep everybody excited. And of course, at the same time, you work with networks like us, right, to figure out the largest reach, right, to reach your targeted audience. And of course, ultimately, I think the success really depends on your effort. And the guys whom we saw has been successful are the guys who is really really daring and not worrying about failing in a campaign, and keep on trying and perfecting it. And of course, as I'm sure you're a mobile advertising guru as well, right? And you see most of the successful campaign has been brands, right, who kept on going back and to optimize and perfecting the whole campaign. And these gets you better and better every time.